Welcome back, everybody, with the roundtable talking about the reform of the Port Authority. And let me start, Adam, with you, since much of this really reform effort started in Bergen County, where you're hailing from, where you do a lot of work up there, political consulting and the like. And it started there about Bridgegate, which is a governance issue maybe, but it seems to be fading into a political issue here. I'm curious your thoughts on this thing now.
It's fading into a political issue because it's being driven by the Democrats. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with the veto override, because you had a bill that was passed bipartisan. Are the Republicans going to come in the Senate to vote for the override? They voted for the original bill. They supported the original bill. Are they willing to challenge the governor now? That may bring some, reduce some of the political nature of it.
That was like a serious thing?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
absolutely very serious.
I understand in theory, but you don't actually think they're going to do that, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
Absolutely not. But I do believe that's what's leading to the political nature of what's going on at the Port Authority. There are some real reforms that have to happen.
Serious things that need to change.
But the problem...
How you're going to get there?
Let me ask Steve on the Republican side here for 1 second. When you look at Governor Cuomo and Governor Christie, not aligned totally with the way the reforms have to be at the moment here, it looks like the dog and the cat with their arms around each other. It looks unnatural to be against this transparency issue.
Not at all. I mean, your problem is Governor Cuomo, because he supports Governor Christie's position on the issue, which is that they're going to institute these reforms at the Port Authority itself, and they're not going to need any legislation. In fact, a lot of the recommendations that have come forth in the legislation have already been implemented at the Port Authority. Listen, the Port Authority is the engine, economic engine for our region, and has been traditionally set up that way from day one by the two governors of these two states, and it's never going to change because they are responsible to these two governors for a heck of a lot of stuff.
They're responsible more than the governor. They're responsible to the people in both states.
Steve made a point before on this thing that you just made now, which is about how much it has to change or not change. And on a branding issue, which is what we talked before here, the brand view of the Port Authority, which is big as 30 states governments, right? It's used.
That's right.
The brand is fraying, that Steve said.
It may be so. But with all due respect, the success of the Port Authority has been the fact, as it was set up to be, that it can cut through all sorts of red tape through the states and through the city to get things done, and that's why it's been so successful. Now, no governor of New Jersey and governor of New York is going to give away their ability to do what it's going to do at the Port Authority as far as patronage, as far as power, as far as dollars.
Steve.
Well, whether
Steve,
it's right or wrong, that's the fact. That's a fact.
I understand.
And you see what Cuomo and Christie.
I understand. And listen, what I said, and I didn't mean to be snarky about the override. What I meant was, it isn't going to happen in Albany, and it isn't going to happen in New Jersey, because these governors are not going to be overridden. But the larger question from my perspective, Steve, is the Port Authority gained its reputation, the solid reputation, by getting people back and forth between New York and New Jersey, because they ran the bridges well, they ran the tunnels well, they ran the airports well. But when they got into real estate, when they got into other areas, they got into problems. And the patronage issue, frankly, Steve, is a problem. You know and I know it. And just to say the governors aren't going to give up their patronage doesn't make it right.
And then a lot of the reforms you look at here involve the legislatures of both states here. And, you know, Steve, I shuddered when I first heard that they wanted more involvement in this process because you're going to yourself, oh, if you think it's bad with two governors and patronage, welcome to the two bodies of two states.
And those two governors know that. Those two governors are banking on all the convoluted process of the legislators getting involved.
And legislators know nothing about running anything.
And
they
the
know how
thing
to send resumes over them.
And these governors are positioning themselves like they want transparency for the Port Authority,
but remember this,
but they want to take credit for implementing that transparency.
That's where Governor
No, it's a brilliant move by Governor Christie.
As long as it's real, Sibyl. As long as what they do, as long as what the governors want to happen in New York and New Jersey, Cuomo and Christie, is what is real. That there's one chief executive and not an executive director from one state and the chairman from another state, and they're politically appointed. There's one chief executive. There's more transparency. As long as it's real.
What's the thought of from the group here about the job that John Degnan, who was put there as a former executive of Chubb Insurance? Anybody have any takes on too early to judge, or is he doing the job?
I think he's doing a very, very good job. I think he's restoring confidence to the organization. I think he's the kind of fellow that transcends party lines. There's no question he has the respect, you know, and he has the ability to be a leader at that organization. And like, Steve, you're right. The Port Authority got into so many things they shouldn't be getting into. There were reasons for all these things, and they're going to pull back a little bit now and trim their sails and get back to their core business. But I want to say one other point. Do you think that Steve Sweeney, the Senate president, or John Wisniewski, who's a leading Democrat, or Steve Phillip, for that matter, who's mayor of Jersey City, if they ever became governor of New Jersey, would make any major changes at the Port Authority? That's why you're not seeing a major outcry among the Democratic leadership with regard to that.
That's what I said to you before, that these governors, Cuomo and Christie, they are representing every governor before them
exactly
and
right.
every governor after
That's
them.
exactly
And here's
right.
the thing. They don't really... See, John Wisniewski can say, these governors are controlling patronage. Jobs, right? If John Wisniewski were to become governor, Steve's right.
Right.
You think he'd say, oh, I don't want any jobs at the Port Authority? That's ridiculous. The point is this. Those governors have had that history, but it doesn't make it right, Steve. At a certain point,
if it's
it
gonna happen,
became
it's
too
gonna
many
happen now.
jobs, too much patronage, and the Port Authority, in my opinion, has lost its direction and its vision because it's become too political.
I do think it's a great first step, though, getting away from the political appointee of a chairperson and executive and deputy executive director. That happened in 1994. Historically, Pataki had put up a very conservative chair. Whitman pushed back, and that led to the deal where New Jersey got a deputy executive director, and it started almost a bifurcated agency, New Jersey side, Republic.
That's not about running things well. That's
side.
about you get your person, I get mine. But that's poor management.
Absolutely, and it has to come back.
It may be a great first step, but there's still definitely skeletons in the closet. If you talk about Governor Christie, the business relationship he has with Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, having a business relationship with the Port Authority, there are skeletons in the closet. And both of these men, Cuomo and Christie, at the moment have bigger fish to fry. They could both potentially run for president, so they don't really want to be.
Well, one of the biggest
You can't throw that out there until that is looked at, until we come to this, someone objectively comes to a conclusion and says there's a problem with that.
Well,
You gotta watch
It's
that.
not a criticism, but we're aware that there is some kind of business relationship going on
transparency is
there.
needed.
More transparency.
You know, when you talk
Agreed.
about the resumes and the jobs and the patronage, it really does pale in comparison to what Governor Christie did here, which is go out to get billions of dollars under the representation that the Pulaski Skyway repair was absolutely a core mission and connected to the Port Authority, and that's being investigated
Well,
right now.
let me say this.
And that's a lot of money. That's not a patronage job.
First of all, the New York State, for many, many years, has used the Port Authority the same way they built the first original World Trade Center that Governor Rockefeller used, and so many other things in New York State for so many years. When I was a little kid growing up in New Jersey, constantly read about how New York State was abusing the Port Authority to build things. Well, it's about time New Jersey got its fair share, too.
Abuse the Port Authority to get its
We're going to get ours now.
That's exactly.
Well, we got ours then at the Port Authority.
Our taxpayers benefited by that. And don't forget who pays those tolls.
Yeah.
Don't forget who pays those tolls.
Disproportionately New Jersey.
World Trade
That's exactly
Center was
right.
a Jersey.
And we need to get our fair share.
If that's what you, if you mean by fair share,
Yeah.
I would agree with you.
Yes,
But there was a deal and a fair share around the World Trade Center where the New York governor agreed, give us the votes that we need for the original World Trade Center, and we will subsidize your pass service. And that's a $365 million deal.
And now
$1 million a day loss.
And now they want to cut back on the PATH service because it's losing money. Thankfully, New Jersey got it restored. So, you know, this give and take between the two states has happened for decades, and it will happen for decades going forward.
I want to go to a branding question with Steve here. Just from a branding issue and a perception issue, and a lot of this is about perception, transparency, and the like. When you look as a branding expert and you go to the Port Authority and say, guys, this is what's got to get fixed. What is this?
Well, one of the first things is, see how you said guys? It's one of the first problems.
That's Jersey talk for everybody on the planet.
No. But Jim, that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, a lot of, no disrespect, middle-aged and older white guys, and not a bad thing, but a little more diversity would help, a little more difference of opinion, different perspectives would help. You don't have a lot of that. The Port Authority, and from my point of view, needs different opinions, perspectives, and frankly, those public meetings do not allow for a more open discourse and allow people to express their point of view.
Well,
those commissioners,
they've started that.
They've got to go because they had such a long way to go. In my opinion, they need to be more responsive to people when they come to those meetings because they feel, I think people feel as if they already made the decision. We're going through the process. We're not really listening to you because we already decided. Even if that's the case, they've got to get acting lessons or something to make it look like they care more because it doesn't feel as if those commissioners care. And I believe John Degnan does, and he's got to get them to be more engaged and involved because it doesn't feel as if they're responsive. That's the first thing in branding. If people think you don't care, Jim, Nothing else
Adam,
matters.
you want the last partisan word?
You don't see any of these reforms being initiated by these commissioners. Everything's coming from the governors. You want to completely...
Take the initiative.
Right,
They're the
take the
stars of the show
initiative.
here.
They're supposed to be an independent authority, act like you're actually a government agency, and take some initiative to do
They're appointed by
it.
their governors also, and they also take direction from their governors as well.
But they
these are
need to be a little
political
more
appointments.
independent, Steve.
There you go. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be right back.